Welcome to Life Empowers with Melissa Oden. I always like to say where there is life, there is hope, but I have to also say where there is an IT guy, there is also hope. I am here today with Lyric Gillett from the organization Faces of Choice. And honestly, if anybody was trying to watch us live, I'm just going to apologize because I don't know, how many times did my computer black out? 3 maybe, Lyric? So you've essentially done this interview talking to yourself a number of times. And so I just want to thank you for that. And unfortunately, ask you to share again a little bit about what brings us to this moment in time. I think people may recognize your name. They could recognize your face or a little bit about Faces of Choice, but they may not, be able to connect about why they recognize that. So tell me, how did you and I get to know each other?
Well, my face is not quite on a wanted poster, but I'm definitely a troublemaker. And it started when I decided to harass you for 2 years straight to convince you that I was not crazy, but had a crazy idea. And essentially the vision was to create a Super Bowl commercial comprised of survivors of abortion. Having heard you speak, having seen what's transpiring with other survivors like Gianna Jessen, and realizing that as active as my family has been, as I have been in the pro-life movement, the fact that you all are not the face of the pro-life movement is truly the greatest travesty and honestly, media-driven plan that I can even conceive of. And so I have seen you all be shut out of every single media discussion, which we'll go into a little bit later regarding the entire COVID situation. But when you all should be leading the charge, basically you have been reduced to the status of a unicorn. Very few people know that you exist. Most people who do on the other side claim that you don't exist. And pretend that you're just some kind of manufactured concept that the pro-life movement dreamed up after, eating bad pizza one night. And it has to stop. And so our connection came through the attempt to create a pro-life Super Bowl commercial of abortion survivors. And so we connected. You graciously agreed to compile survivors who were willing to share their stories. That process began, 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. And I began reaching out to Fox with my media buyer in June, July of last year. And we were one of the very first advertisers to reach out to them of anyone requesting a slot. We sent them the storyboards. We did every single thing that was required and requested of us to do. And we were given one stipulation after the other, one request after the other, all of which we met. We were encountered with months of basic ghosting, of ridiculous excuses, of having the buck passed one after the other, of being told month after month that we would receive an answer within a matter of days. There was a great expenditure of funds for recording, for travel costs, for studio, for production, for editing, the whole 9 yards. It was an investment of time that really was tantamount to a full-time job, if not more. All the while we were being strung along and led to believe that we would at least be given the dignity of a response, like every other advertiser in the professional business world that is a legitimate entity. And so we sent every bit of documentation we could find, everything that was requested. We were told in November rather, and I quote, "This is not a sellout situation." And days later, we were contacted really with glee as we were told that the Super Bowl had been sold out. Actually, let's go back.
You were passing on messages, right? I was, you and I would check the news every day, and it was like,
that's right.
They're saying it's sold out, and I think maybe I had found that in the news somewhere and said it. I've seen this commentary that it's sold out, and boom, that's when we finally got the response that, oh, sorry, there are no more slots available, which I think is really interesting. I know it's difficult to kind of talk about the process because, as you've shared, we weren't told flat out no, but we were strung along in such a huge way. And I think unless people were going through that with us, they probably can't really understand what that process was like, to be told, you're going to get a response by Friday. Friday would pass. We'd work through the weekend, right? Saturday, Sunday, people are still trying to contact people. Monday rolls around, still nothing. And then at one point, even before that, there was this comment, and I can't remember who made it, but wasn't the comment something like, don't be expecting any kind of response about this anytime soon.
So that was a beautiful little situation. So after we had been strung along from June until November and this sellout happened, we approached them again because my media buyer told me, Lyric, look, I know how this works. Every single year, there are always spots that open up after the initial sellout. It's not really a sellout. You're going to have people who are going to drop out. You're going to have advertisers that have some kind of problem with content. There will always be a spot open. So to force their hand, number one, but also to ensure that we have a fighting chance at this, we need to tell them that we are formally requesting that they still give us an answer. Even though this is November, it's sold out. We have till February. Approve or officially deny our commercial. That way, when spots open up, we will have the ability to step in. Because if the spots open up and we're still not approved, every other advertiser that wanted to be waiting in line that was already approved would have the first ability to step in. So we emailed back and forth with those individuals. This has gone all the way through legal. We've literally had people flying from the sales department, the vice president of sales from Chicago, that was mortified at how this was transpiring, flying to New York and having meetings on our behalf to figure out what was going on. So not to sound conspiratorial, but this did have a lot to do with content. The people in the sales division were absolutely flabbergasted about what was transpiring. And so anyway, we had that happen. We were initially told, oh, well, okay, there's some things we need to work out with you. You guys never told us what you were selling. And that was a big part of the holdup for us approving or denying. We made it very clear from day one that we were not trying to sell anything, that we were trying to step out as an awareness campaign. And that was the start and the finish of it. They knew who you were. They saw our website. They saw the survivors' testimonies. They knew everything. So we were met with ridiculous little statements after the sellout. And finally, they said, okay, we're going to get back with you as soon as possible with an answer. Don't worry. And about a week and a half later, contacted them again because we didn't hear anything. And the response was, we've decided we're not going to give you any kind of answer unless or until a spot opens. To which I responded in an email and I said, it's very obvious what's transpiring here. If 5-6 months have gone by and you all have been unable to give us an answer, you're not going to give us an answer when one day there's a dropout and we're going to possibly have the ability to step in. So, I made it very clear that we're not idiots. We can tell what's going on. And of course, we never received a response to that. And as an aside, I would also like to add that of the many articles that have come forward on this, many of the reporters asked to see copies of the email communication that went back and forth, of the phone records, of texting records, which we provided. And you can see in many of the different articles that were written where the reporters have said, we reviewed what happened, and this is consistent with what Faces of Choice is telling us. And they were appalled. So anyway, all of this rolls around. January comes around, 6 more spots open up. Of course, they don't contact us. My media buyer finds that out through the industry that 6 more spots are open. And we immediately begin contacting them again. We're not dignified with an answer, which is really ironic for how all of this is transpiring, because it's the same situation with survivors of abortion. You all have been marginalized out of existence and completely ignored into oblivion. And that is the same thing that was happening on a media level, which is so incredibly disturbing. It's not even a matter of just twisting the narrative or changing the narrative a bit to fit your agenda. It has literally become a matter of completely ignoring an entire facet of reality. And so January, like I said, came around, this transpired, more spots open. We didn't get an answer. My Faith Votes stepped in with Jason Yates. They put together a petition, I think 3 days before the Super Bowl. And within a matter of days, over 150,000 emails were sent to Fox demanding that they simply give us the dignity of a response. Even if that was a no, that's fine. Just operate according to standard business practice. That's all that we're requesting. And so, of course, we never got an answer. One newspaper got a response, which essentially they said, we're sorry to say that we sold out too quickly to give them an answer.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember reading it in the news. I don't remember them.
Right. No, they never told us that. They only told that one reporter. I don't know if there was some kind of connection or if it was an intern who flubbed, because honestly, that's the most ridiculous response I can conceive of. But thank God we had an incredible media blitz, hundreds of thousands of views. One article through Life News was shared over 300,000 times alone. You all were recognized as the people, as the humans that you are. And, the longer commercial, and again, this commercial, this was not a graphic commercial. This was, the word abortion was not even used. It was the word choice and close-ups of really attractive faces. That was it. Your face, the face of, Josiah and Zechariah, an adorable 5-year-old boy. This is what we're looking at with beautiful music in the background. There's nothing offensive or disturbing about this at all. We had the longer commercial script where I did put in more of what I wanted to say, and actually talked about the procedures that you all survived. That was, you debuted that at the March for Life soon after President Trump spoke from the main stage, which was incredible. So you all have received a lot of attention, in the pro-life movement, especially recognizing that you exist, but neither you nor I are satisfied with this. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is not the 100 million Americans who have never even heard of the concept or the notion of a survivor of abortion. And that is who the target audience needs to be. That is what we're going for. I will not rest until we break through that. And so that's kind of the trajectory now, is to continue being a troublemaker until they give us the dignity of a response and at least acknowledge the existence of what I believe are hundreds of thousands of people living in the United States alone, not to mention the international survivors that we've connected with who are cropping up everywhere.
Well, and I know you know this already, but I'm grateful for you. Even if I was not a survivor myself, and I was just someone in the general public who is pro-life, I would be so thankful for you, because it seems like common sense, right? It seems like common sense to give a group of people who have been marginalized, who are representative of a group of individuals who are being targeted for abortion still today, and still surviving today. I mean, I heard of a little boy surviving an abortion right before COVID, survived a late term abortion, and was born alive. And, I still pray that he is alive today. I haven't heard much more about him, but, not everybody has the passion and the fire to do what you have done. And I think it's funny, because if people knew just how you put your nose to the grindstone to make this happen, like, you're a scrapper like me. I didn't go into the pro-life movement with a set of skills to be an activist. I mean, certainly that's my heart, and that's kind of how God made you too. But I never thought, gee, Lyric and I are going to, work together to try to push her video through to the Super Bowl.
I was a little wonky. You did. You can admit it now. We're good enough friends. You thought I was a little bit addled, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
No, I mean, let's just, okay, here's the real version, right? Like, we've never talked about this. The real version would be,
oh boy.
How many times did I say to you in the middle of this, Lyric, this is not going to happen this way, right? Like, the odds are stacked against us. I'm a realist. And you were always the very passionate, hopeful. And again, just like you were not letting go of, like, this is going to happen. I'm just going to keep pressing on. And I was the one who kept going, plan B. What's plan B?
But you know what? God used that, because plan B, having this debut at the March for Life, is a huge element of what enabled the catalyst of all kinds of different elements coming around this, from the pro-life movement to really promulgate this when the pseudo rejection happened. So it really worked out perfectly. I cannot imagine that it would have come together any better than this, honestly. We're not done.
It is. But, I guess, that's my big question for you, because I think if I didn't know you and I was just listening to everything you had to say, I would walk away from this jaded, thinking, I'm not ever going to do this again. But where are you at?
Still in the land of the addled wanderer. No, definitely not. Already begun talks for the next Super Bowl. I don't know how COVID is going to affect all of this. We had begun talks soon after, my media buyer and I. Everything's kind of on the quiet side, but we've been working on some very interesting projects that I've talked to you about. coming up. We'll see where some of those go. We're going to keep those on the QT for now, but no, as far as major media outlets, though, that is still 100% in the go. Maybe even things like Good Morning America. Oddly enough, we've actually received some positive response from other media outlets for things like that. So we're looking into those types of avenues. Looking into possibly really doing a billboard push, actually, in the near future. Really, the point is to help people understand that when you say that you are pro-choice, words have meaning. And if you look at a survivor in the face and tell them that, I supported your mother's choice, well, her choice was to end your life. So if you support her choice, that means that you are against your survival. And I think that vernacular, that understanding needs to be commonplace in America for this to actually be an honest dialogue. If you want to have a difference of opinion, if you want to disagree, fine, but at least be intellectually honest, at least come to the table with the truth of what is transpiring, and then defend your position from a position of honesty. And so I think that is really what the media is afraid of. I think that's why they don't want this to go forward, because if you all, when you all become the Rosa Parks and the Martin Luther King Juniors of your specific situation, when you are a survivor, just like all throughout history, that is what is going to change this narrative. And that is why I'm being a stick in the mud and joining alongside of you in what you've been doing for the past decade, because I know the heart of the American people. I know what is going to make a change. And so that's why I'm not content until this happens. I mean, you can look at William Wilberforce and what he did and how many decades he fought for what he did and how he had to go through so many machinations and ridiculous tactics for accomplishing what he did. And so I think when the pushback is the hardest, that shows that you're in the right place. And it's just the mentality of rise and rise again until lambs become lions. That really is, as corny as it sounds, that is my life motto. That is how I look at life. I know that's how you look at life. Waiting for the spirit basically to animate people who are asleep, to bring life to something that is there, but that is dormant and that is dead. And that is what I believe abortion survivors have the power to do, through God's help, to animate that which is not living inside of people, just really based out of a lack of knowledge and a lack of information and a lack of seeing humanity for what it is and a human struggle for what it is. And I think that we can get there. I just think that unfortunately, the element that our founders envisioned as the means for disseminating truth, for keeping truth going, is actually what is now squelching it. And so it's going to be a hard fight. It's been a hard fight. You fought that for over a decade, but I'm confident that with enough squeaking and squealing and yammering, that will change. We've seen the ripples of change already.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because it's the first time you and I have really been able to talk in a while, right? Like we text frequently about things, but, I don't think I've had a chance to really tell you what I've seen happening even during the stay-at-home orders. So, I mean, first of all, after the ad campaign ran, I know you were contacted by families of survivors and survivors themselves who were really impacted by that, now knowing that they weren't alone. And certainly through the Abortion Survivors Network, I was contacted by countless individuals and families. And at this point, we've now connected with over 325 abortion survivors. And the story that I keep hearing time and time again, because we're doing monthly Zoom meetings now with survivors because of COVID-19, which, I mean, it in God's infinite wisdom just needed to happen anyway. But it's so fascinating to me because I keep hearing survivors say, I've known this for, I have a survivor who's pushing 70, and she said, I've known my story like forever. But she said, I moved on from it. I essentially buried it. I needed to raise my children. I had a family to take care of. And I keep hearing this story from other survivors, but then the story comes out and each survivor is saying, and then I Googled abortion survivor. And then I Googled abortion survivor and I found the Face the Choice ad campaign. I found the Abortion Survivors Network website. And suddenly I knew I wasn't alone.
Yeah. I mean, that really is a gaslighting technique, unfortunately, that the media has been using to say, oh, you're crazy. Oh, your story is not relevant. Oh, you're hurting people with your story. You're offending people with your story. This really isn't important. You're an anomaly anyway. Why would you base legislation off of an anomaly? And what we know from, the Pulitzer Prize nominated piece called Abortion, the Dreaded Complication in the 80s. Like I said, I'm not sure if I said it on this iteration of this podcast or one of the other, kind of confused at this point, but back then they were estimating that at least one baby a day was surviving a botched abortion. And this is not just a case of a baby surviving and, oh, everybody's going to come around it and help. This is really an inhumane situation that we have transpiring. We have people in New York that are advocating for abortion until you're literally emerging from the birth canal. And there were so many stories, and looking in the dreaded complication of children. I remember one child was found in a paper bag in winter outside of a hospital next to an incinerator. What can possess someone? Laws are there for a reason. If you want to say that we should just dispense with laws that make people uncomfortable, or that laws won't work, what should we lift rape laws because they're going to happen anyway? This is a nonsensical modality of thought. And, when you have other situations where nurses are being told with their type of law that they're used to not resuscitate children who are aborted and survive, and you have another instance of a baby that was left in a broom closet for 12 hours while the nurse left her shift after being told to leave the baby alone, went home, came back, and found the baby still in that broom closet gasping for breath, and then she left it to die.
Yeah, were you reading the piece up at Live Action today? I don't know if you've seen that or not.
No.
It was a similar case, and it came from that Philadelphia Inquirer series. For people who aren't aware, it's the dreaded complication. Liz Jeffries was one of the authors of that in 1981, and I think it's really interesting because you've probably seen it too. That whole series not only is very in depth, but it was taken and then used in hearings later on about abortion. And so for me, that's fascinating when I know that has gone before committee. I know that's forever ago in the grand scheme of things, but that was record. And yet when I go testify before Congress, I have people sitting there saying, this doesn't happen. And this is just me asking for some sort of special treatment as the one person who survived an abortion. That was admitted as evidence 40 years ago. We've known this all along. The truth has always been here.
It has. And I'm convinced that this is a very clear agenda of stifling the truth, of stifling the humanity of this issue for the purpose of not letting real change happen. I know the moment that you guys have your voice, things are going to change. And y'all should be at the very top of the hierarchy of the right to speak. It's not, if you're going to talk about experiential relationship to the issue that only women who've had abortions should be able to speak, that's logically untenable. You guys who survived this issue are the very face of choice. You all should be given, if you want to have a final word for women who've had an abortion, no, the final word should be left with the people who survived the process. And, we live in an era that's promoting the Me Too movement, the Believe All Survivors movement. Why are you different? What element came out when you were born that said their survival story doesn't matter? Their survival story is irrelevant. It's inconvenient to the typical narrative, and that is why you're being stifled. And it's a very clear indicator that we have a truth problem in our society. We're not looking for the truth. We're looking for what emotionally satisfies and satiates our wants and our desires. And that is deadly. That is how every great atrocity has transpired. We have preconceived notions or desires or an agenda, and we stick to that. So if we want to claim to be better than Nazi Germany, or if we want to claim to be better than Civil War, era America, to say that we're actually progressing, we cannot continue doing what we are doing and sacrificing other people's lives on the altar of the autonomous for our own gain. And that's really what's happening now. So, we launched another campaign, much smaller, during the very beginning and in the throes of this COVID crisis. Jennifer Milbourne is one of our survivors, the beautiful redhead. She's a vacuum aspiration abortion survivor. And during her video, for her personal video for Faces of Choice, each survivor had their own personal video, as you all know. She made a statement in which she said that I am not a disease that must be taken care of. abortion is not healthcare. And so in the middle of this COVID situation, instead of allowing people like you to even be able to weigh in as a guest speaker, I mean, that is a basic bare minimum request. Instead of allowing you all to do that, I mean, did you receive any kind of invitation to any media outlet for this? News outlets were promulgating the idea that the pro-life movement was some kind of evil, lunatic mentality that was trying to take away the essential need of women to have an abortion during COVID by shutting down clinics, where these clinics were keeping essential personal protection equipment like gloves, masks, and gowns, when nurses were reusing things in hospitals trying to save people. So anyway, this comment that Jennifer had kind of springboarded into a campaign I called Not a Disease, which basically was saying that abortion survivors, babies are not a disease that must be taken care of. They are human beings. And to elevate this to the level of essential healthcare, when you have people who are dying in hospitals of cancer, or not getting treated for their cancer even during the COVID situation because they have to stay home, it is untenable to make these kinds of claims, number one, but number two, without even allowing a rebuttal from someone who has actually survived this process.
Yeah, it's a slap in the face. It's interesting because I don't take any of it personally. I can't. I would not survive this whole process if I took it personally. But it is really, it is a slap in the face to read those kind of comments that say, yeah, having an abortion is essential, yet all of the other treatment is somehow deemed not essential. I mean, the hierarchy is so false.
Yeah.
So false. But in the grand scheme of things, we know that is essentially just the hierarchy that the abortion lobby has successfully created, and then had the pro-abortion politicians and the media then are now interconnected into that. So I want to talk about that as we close. We have just a few minutes left, but as we talk about how the media responded to you as you were rolling out the ad, and of course, I know how the media treats me. Crickets, a lot of crickets. Although I am grateful for those mainstream media in particular who do have survivors on. Let's do more of that. Mainstream media, if you catch this, we're not scary. We're just trying to have a conversation. But, how do you unravel this? Where do you go from here? Is your plan to just keep going after the Super Bowl ad, or is there another way that we unravel how all of this is so deeply intertwined?
Well, you and I have talked about some rather cockamamie ideas for bursting through.
But come on, I mean, without saying what some of that is, that COVID's kind of ruined some of that fun.
To a degree. But, the World Cup is coming up. That's in 2022. There are lots of other things that are coming up. And I think that there is kind of a general malaise right now. Everybody is exhausted, and I understand that. But typically what happens when you look at the waves of history and how things happen, once there's this kind of sigh of relief that everybody takes, a little bit of shock value coming in is kind of perfect timing. And I honestly, looking back on all of this and how all of it has transpired, as disappointed as I have gotten, as honestly tired and discouraged as I have gotten, I have seen that there has been a very clear trajectory of perfect timing. And I'm kind of thinking that's the same thing that's going to happen, that there is going to be, and we have some things in the works. You and I have talked about a couple of things I will share with you later too. Some thoughts.
I have some ideas for you too.
Yes, we need to talk about some things. But I think that having something that again animates, imbues life, brings things that were formerly dormant and tired awake. I really do believe, whether it's even through something simple like billboard campaigns, I'm free talking about that. There just needs to be the consistency that William Wilberforce had, the creativity, the ability to just work together, which we've done splendidly and had fun in the process for the most part, doing that. I think that this is just a matter of waiting things out and being consistent and finding that opportunity to break through. I was hoping for a breakthrough with the Super Bowl. That would have been great. And although it was it turned out well in the end, it was not how we envisioned it. But I'm not planning to ever stop this until we have that breakthrough. And I genuinely mean that. If I am 70 years old, which God forbid, I don't envision this continuing that long, but this is not something that is simply going to disappear into the dark night and say, oh, that was good. I'm glad I did that, woohoo. That's not
tried hard enough that one time.
That's not what this is. That's not what this is ever going to be. And so we need people coming around the Abortion Survivors Network. We need people coming around Faces of Choice and actually consistently being there and realizing that this is not just a fun project. This is not simply a fulfilling life goal. This goes so far outside of that in a way that will have shockwaves throughout all of humanity. Generations of people who would not exist will exist. That's what we're talking about here. This is not a nebulous concept. This is bringing healing and also the ability to bring post-abortive healing through people like you. I'm thinking of your story. I'm thinking of Denisha Werkeiser's story. I'm thinking of so many others, Claire's story, how they actually reconciled with their birth mothers. I've had birth mothers contact me to say, I am post-abortive, and when I saw your campaign, I was terrified that those survivors were going to be heaping condemnation on my head. And I cannot tell you how healing it was that every single video that I saw, they either reconciled with their birth mothers or spoke loving, forgiving words over their birth mothers. And this has the capacity to heal so many elements of society, to revive truth, to hold the media accountable. This is multifaceted, and I'm just asking that people continue being supportive through prayer, through other means, financial means, engagement, whatever. I know you've had some great fundraisers running on your page often. I want to see people investing in that, because this is, I don't want to sound whatever, but I can say with conviction that the abortion survivor is the key to ending mainstream abortion. I know that for a fact by looking at history. You just have to be given the voice and the platform to do that. And that is why you have all kinds of other people, even in the mainstream. They'll bring pro-life people on CNN. They bring them on for, some kind of mosh pit. They never bring people like you on. And there's a reason for that. And that will change.
And that's why I love you. Because we'll change it together. Yeah, I like to close my podcast by, just always reminding people that when people say abortion empowers, we have a response to that. What would you say to someone if they said abortion empowers women, or abortion is synonymous with empowerment?
For you to state that one must arrest a very intrinsic biological process in order to receive empowerment, to me, is an ultimate insult against the biology, the function, the unique value of what a woman is, just on a biological level. And that is one tiny little element of this. Obviously, a woman's value is not found in whether or not she can have a child. But the point is that if you are saying that that is a bad thing, that her unique capacity to do that is bad, you're saying a lot about women in general, and it's not a very empowering statement at all. But outside of that, would you make the same assertion that the ability to own a slave is empowering, or the ability to wipe out a population of people that you think is lesser than you is empowering? Anytime you equate bloodshed to empowerment, you need to understand that is a very dangerous psychological game to play. I don't see empowerment through the women that are suicidal after abortion, and not even because they're being judged by their culture. We live in a very pro-abortion culture. Those who have, when you arrest that kind of biological process, you set off a springboard of hormonal situations that is very detrimental, from cancer to psychological issues. I honestly cannot see one element that is empowering outside of what the media narrative is saying, that you can't be a successful woman or graduate college unless you have this abortion, therefore be successful and graduate. These are logically incomprehensible and incompatible, concepts. And again, what about the women who are being aborted? What about women like you? You were aborted. You are a woman. How is that empowering to you? This is just, it's logically untenable in a way that I'm almost unable to articulate, because we have been fed and bought a lie, and we've taken it hook, line, and sinker. But when you actually meet it out, there is nothing of any value to this statement other than to say that it's almost a very animalistic concept, that survival of the fittest requires killing anything that gets in your way. So let's just go to those animalistic roots and be rid of human empathy altogether and just kill anything that may in any form prevent us from living. And, we have so many crisis pregnancy centers. We have so many incredible adoption agencies. We have resources abound. And if the mainstream media were so busy pushing these kinds of resources as they are pushing and funding abortion, the entire face of this world would be different. So no, It's not empowering, it's life draining.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for your patience today, my friend. I am so glad we got all the bugs worked out. Let's do this again sometime.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Bye.
Bye.